listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me?
Yeah.
Famous?
Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Get on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
There's no human being I'd rather be talking to right now than Tim Britton. Why, Tim? Why?
That's my introduction every time. I'm always the best person for you to talk to.
It's your introduction every time?
Yeah, that's what I always hear.
I mean, it's amazing. Thank you for listening to the podcast. It's the introduction for every single human being who's been on here.
No, I refuse to believe that.
Well, in fairness, it's true every time, because I am truly honored every time I talk to you, and truly honored every time I talk to anybody on this. And that's a streak that hasn't been broken and won't be broken this time. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Juan Soto.
Yeah, that's
he plays for the Mets.
Yes, yeah, I've heard.
He plays for the Mets. So when you started, Juan Soto signed with the Mets. Mm-hmm. I think we were there both when it happened.
Yeah.
We may have done a podcast.
In
a hotel lobby.
In a hotel lobby.
Yeah. So this is a good jumping off point. As we were talking through this, and I encourage everybody to go back to that podcast back in December, and now we've landed here in May, before we get to sort of all the chaos and controversy and everything else, what surprises you the most, if anything, about sort of what this was? Because, I think at that time, when you have these teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox, but all bidding, and all we're hearing is, no, he's worth the money. It's not only because he's a great player, it's because he's this and that and this and that and this and that. Well, okay, what actually was with this and that? What was the surprising of what was?
About what's transpired?
Yeah. I mean, just about him. I mean, it can be as a player, it can be as a human, whatever.
I think the thing that's confused Mets fans the most at the moment is that you're not seeing the kind of confidence that you're used to seeing in Juan Soto in the batter's box. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing that Soto shuffle after a pitch on the outside that he gets a good look at, or that head nod that he does seemingly preceding a home run. We're used to seeing, Mets fans certainly are used to seeing it from his time in Washington and then across town with the Yankees, that, the way he kind of controls an at-bat, not just in how he takes a pitch, but in the kind of attitude he expresses in the at-bat, and that's been absent for most of the regular season. And so that's been the prelude to thinking that he's not quite himself so far. And the numbers, his overall numbers look pretty solid. His OPS plus, I think, is 130 or 132. Would that all of our slumps is 30% better than the league average, but he hasn't come through in kind of the bigger spots. He's only got one hit with a runner in scoring position in the last 29 or 30 days. So it's been, he hasn't had that kind of signature moment that every player wants to have in their new town. Hasn't had that walk-off hit or that big eighth-inning go-ahead home run. And so I think, there's been a little bit of caution in kind of Queen's embrace of him to this point. And that the team is struggling at the same time he's struggling these last few days just amplifies the spotlight.
So here, let's play amateur psychologist. Why? Why? I mean, I think you hit on something, though. I remember always talking about this with a guy. Now, he's been to a couple different teams, so he's been through this rodeo before. But there's also that moment where you have your moment, and all of a sudden you realize I'm part of this team. The guy I always remember talking to about this was Torrey Hunter. This shows you how old I am, but Torrey Hunter, when he went from the Twins to the Angels, he was slumping, then he hits a grand slam, and then all of a sudden he's a hero, and he's like, I'm finally actually part of this team. I think what you said was interesting, that he hasn't had that moment. I don't know if that's the thing. But for you, what is the impetus for this? What is the impetus for this? It's okay, it's all right, I'm a little uncomfortable. What's the impetus for it?
I mean, I think it is just he doesn't feel 100% himself at the plate. I think, he hasn't come through in those bigger spots. I think he's not doing, I don't think he's struggling because he's not doing the shuffle. I think he's not doing the shuffle because he's struggling. He understands that it's not where he wants to be mentally and kind of controlling those at-bats like we talked about. And so I think as he, when he gets kind of that jam shot base hit to score 2 late in the game, like, maybe lucks into something. He's hitting the ball hard. Like, he hit a ball, I think, 112, 113 miles an hour right at someone the other day in a big spot with runners in scoring position. So he's been close. So I think once that moment comes, there's probably going to be an exhale and a monkey off the shoulders, a monkey off the back kind of thing for him. I think the way this week has gone and the return to the Bronx coinciding with all of this has just made it feel like kind of one thing after another for him and the team.
What's your take on the report stuff? I'm talking about the I guess to start with just the vibe that this isn't his favorite place and it sort of spirals like this. Certainly when he went to San Diego, I didn't get the sense that it was it was sort of you better show that you like it here or else. But what's your take on like all this scuttlebutt, all this buzz?
Yeah, I mean, I think when he went to San Diego, it wasn't a seamless transition for him at that point. The way it hasn't been at this point. Everyone I've talked to in the Mets clubhouse and the Mets front office, they're not concerned that this is.
They think he likes it here.
They think he's comfortable. Like we've seen him go into the bullpen and just kind of BS with the relievers down there during stoppages in play. Guys genuinely seem to like him, and vice versa. So I think, again, it's 2 months into a 15-year relationship. I don't think the Mets are. I don't think the Mets. They put a lot of time and research into their decision to give Juan Soto $765 million. That wasn't an impulsive decision on the part of Steve Cohen or David Stearns. They've been talking about it since the day Stearns was hired. So I don't think they're going to let 2 months of him being not quite his best affect the way they view that partnership down the line.
What's weird, the fact is that, he was in Washington, he was in San Diego, but last year he was in the exact same city, right? And we talk about the differences in reaction, we talk about the differences in perception, and you didn't, and maybe he got off to a good start with the Yankees, right? I mean, that was a big part of it. But also there was the Judge factor, right? It was like, and everyone said, well, Yankees have Judge and Mets have Lindor, but it's different people, right? I mean, I think I guess you would know better than I would, like, did Soto leapfrog Lindor in the sense of like the alpha? Because he didn't leapfrog Judge, right?
No, I don't think he's leapfrogged Lindor. No. I think Lindor is still the guy who knows, when this team has a losing streak, which they still haven't to this point, really, that he's the guy who has to talk. He's the guy who's still kind of viewed as the leader in the clubhouse. And I think Soto kind of appreciates that, probably the way he appreciated Judge in New York. So I think the big difference is the way he got off to a good start last year. And you know as well as I do that in these big markets, like what happens that first month, those first 2 months, really color how you feel about a player the whole season.
Right.
And Lindor knows that from 2021, where he had the 2 worst months of his career in April and May, his first year with the Mets. And even as he rebounded that season, the next season, there was still a lot of talk like, he's never really liked it here, he's never fit in here, this is too much for him. He got booed in his home stadium, something that has yet to happen to Soto. So, guys on this team, Edwin Diaz is another example, guy who rebounded after a rough first season. Carlos Beltran's in the front office. He did it kind of most famously for them back in 2005 and 2006. So, again, I don't think there's a concern long term here, but let's know, like, that first big hit, that first, 8-game winning streak they're able to put together where he's a real part of it is going to be really helpful down the line.
How different is it? You live on the outskirts of New York / Philadelphia. How different is it playing for the Mets and the Yankees?
Mets versus the Yankees?
Yeah.
I don't know how different. I've only covered the Yankees as an intern. I think the Yankees, I think there's more of a confidence from the Yankees that it's definitely going to work out. It's the Yankees. It works out for them. Whereas the Mets have had kind of that opposite vibe for a long time, that like, you trade for Francisco Lindor and everyone thinks, is this going to be Roberto Alomar again? Is this going to be Carlos Baerga again? Same team, same middle infielder. And so there's kind of that thought that, this great acquisition happens. what's the problem here? There's got to be some other shoe to drop, and I think the Mets are growing out of that. Certainly, the way they played the second part of the second half of last season and the offseason that they executed, I think there's a lot of feeling from the fan base that okay, things are changing here. This is a remaking or rebranding of the franchise under Steve Cohen and David Stearns, and but you got to do it. You got to do it on the field to make that all come to fruition for the fan base.
So our producer Evan does power rankings, which everyone waits up all night. We like to keep it fresh. We don't tell people we're going to drop them. Could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. But the latest one, I think he had and he's a Mets guy. He's a Mets guy. He has a signed Reed Garrett poster right in his backdrop. That's how big a Mets guy he is. He has him as number 3. Okay? Tim Britton's power rankings. You've seen them play. Where do you put them? Where do you put
in the league right now?
Yeah.
I take part in the Athletics power rankings. I believe I also had them 3rd this week.
Behind Detroit?
Actually, just behind the Yankees and Dodgers.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at you.
And so, I think the Phillies are playing well as well in the division. The context to what Soto's gone through the last 5 days is the team's lost 4 of 5, and they're under 500 over the last 23 games. The Phillies have caught them in the division. Atlanta's looking more and more like itself, and this idea that maybe when they were up 5 in the division in April after sweeping the Phillies, there was maybe they can kind of run away and hide a little bit, and we knew that the National League East would not be that easy.
You know what? The only thing better, the best way to punctuate this conversation is you saying, you know who I would like to listen to right now? John Gibbons.
Really like to listen to John Gibbons right now. He's on the inside. He knows more than anyone on this topic.
Well, there you go. Here's John Gibbons.
There's no human being I'd rather be talking to right now about baseball margaritas than John Gibbons.
Are you that bored, Rob?
No, it's never.
We couldn't find anybody else? What is it?
I literally drive. I've driven to Toronto to talk to you. I've driven to New York to talk to you. I think I may have flew to California to talk to you. I don't know. Texas, definitely. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well, Rob, you're one of my favorites, man. It's always good seeing you. Up in, like you mentioned Texas, where I'm from, but my roots are right here, man.
Yeah, we're in Boston. Yeah.
I tell everybody that Yankee blood flows through me, but that's the jerk in me. Not really.
That's it. Listen, I mean, it seems like yesterday Grandma was calling me to say, get my grandson a job with the Boston Red Sox.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I'll see what I can do.
Well, you got more clout now than you used to.
Yeah.
If she was still around, it might work.
Well, you know how long ago that was? I picked up my home line.
Well, you know what, Rob, though? I had some family that live up in Beverly and Gloucester. They came down last night. It's great to see them, and I love this part of the country. It's a beautiful place, and it's my favorite ballpark to go to, and a lot of great memories here.
Yeah, well, you're creating your own great memories, because as the straw that stirs a drink when it comes to a team that wins a lot. So congratulations. And I know you say you got the easiest job in the world, but it's not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that statement. The guy sitting next to me over here, Mike Sarba, our third base coach, has the toughest job on the team,
Oh, especially at Fenway, yeah.
Well, anywhere, he's the only guy, the third base coach, the only guy that's got to go out there. They can't hide in the dugout like the rest of us. They got to think, even the manager and the coaches, we got a little time to think. He's got to think spur of the moment. So he's got the tough job. Not to minimize mine, but, they haven't had a bench coach forever. There's a reason.
Well, listen, all the good decisions, you have a say in. So congratulations. You were when I first met you, you were the first base coach, right? Blue Jays, right? Correct?
Well, before that, the first job I had here was a bullpen catcher.
Bullpen catcher.
Not the bullpen coach, the catcher.
Right.
And that's J.P. Ricciardi, a local boy.
Yeah.
Got me that job when he left Oakland. I left the Mets actually and went to Toronto.
You were the bullpen catcher in Toronto?
First 2 months, Buck Martinez was the manager, and he got fired June 1st, I think it was. They put me at first base and made Carlos Tosca the manager. He was at third base and brought in Brian Butterfield. That's how it all started for me.
Oh, yeah. So then I jumped in, and I'm like, oh, man, who's this guy coaching first? He knows what he's doing. Butter was the third base coach. Who was it? Was there a bench coach then?
I think it was Cookie Rojas.
Oh, really?
I think Cookie was in you. Yeah, but the bench coaches, I can remember in the 80s they didn't have bench coach. That might have just started in like the mid-90s, I think.
Yeah. So tell me about how, in all seriousness, tell me about the art of being a good bench coach.
Well, let's face it. I mean, if to be a major league manager, you have to know what you're doing, right? So, my view is that the way I always used to do it. I had some good ones. DeMarlo Hill, an old favorite here.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's more of a sounding board, and the bench coach will take care of the little things like late in the game, maybe pinch running thing or pinch defense or something like that. Because generally, I think the manager's so locked in on his pitching moves he's going to make, right? And especially start getting towards the middle of the game. Some of those little things, they're not little, but they, in the grand scheme of things, they can be. So he can get distracted with that. So that's where you help out. Or if the manager thinks, what do you think about this move? I'm thinking about this or that. You give him your honest opinion, I think the worst thing you can do is be too smart and try to show a manager how smart you are.
Well, you can't force it, right?
No, because in reality, the manager's got his ideas, and he may bounce things off of you. But if there's a lot of things, if you don't want him changing his mind out there, you want him to be dead set on what he does, because he's got to answer for it. And usually those guys have great instincts of what they're doing, or they wouldn't have got to that spot. But you try to help them that they don't fall into any traps, or something, miss something or something, So
I mean, you probably have a good perspective of it, obviously, having been on the other side of it, right? I mean, say, hey, listen, if I was in Carlos's spot, I wouldn't want my bench coach saying something here. I wouldn't want my bench coach saying something here, right?
And you know what? I don't want to hang anything you wouldn't want to hang anything on your other coach's head,
Yeah.
So that's why you got to be set in your ways. But when there's doubts or you're not sure what decision you make, you bounce things off of. But generally too, the manager works hand in hand with the pitching coach on pitching moves, because those are his guys, So it's just kind of a team effort. And I know he might ask the hitting coaches something about certain guys. He'll talk to Sarby about defensive things. It's really a team effort, Bottom line, though, it comes down to having the good players.
Oh, with this
never fail.
What we got? What was
Cannons?
Oh, the Cannons. The Cannons.
Yeah.
Give me that quote again, just because it makes
Big
me feel
Frank
better.
Howard, man. Everybody knows
Frank Howard. Yeah.
He told me one day, he said, son, when you look in your dugout, you see 2 cannons. You look in the other dugout and you see 4 or 5. He goes, you may win a battle, you ain't winning no war. So true.
Well, as I told you last year, I think it's even more true this year. You have the Cannons, my friend.
Yeah.
You have the Cannons.
Yeah, we like it. We're paying for them.
Hey, how are you going to get the Cannons? It doesn't make a difference.
That's right, man. It's a beautiful thing. Money's a beautiful thing.
Money's a beautiful thing. But to come back to sort of the dynamic you have with Carlos, we talked about this before. About I think it's such a good story about how he didn't know you at all, right? They call you up, they hire you, and now it's okay. You go through 1 year, that's fine. Now you're back. I mean, it shows you sort of what a good fit this is.
Well, we had such a good year last year. We got that Final Four after a slow start, and I mean, we hit off our relationship. I'm one of the older guys on the coaching staffs. So there's maybe some things that I can I definitely put it this way. I'll be honest with you. I don't understand totally the new baseball.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of areas we've got too complicated. But I think sometimes I'd lend a little advice maybe on the way. Maybe we can call it old school, the old way of doing things. It's sometimes worked out pretty good.
But I think it's important to simplify it. Simplify. It's not demeaning. I'm just saying simplify it. Like there's too much. There's a lot of times there's too much. It's just a fact. I mean, it's just too much.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But that's one thing we do here. We got really good balance, because there's a lot of good info out there that's helpful. But yet we also, I think everybody understands the individual that's got to go out there and perform. If they were all robots and you could guarantee a certain outcome, it'd be easy, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. They're human beings, right? And things, they go through ups and downs, and they're not always on. Projection says he maybe should do this or that. Well, okay, that might be the case if he's going good. These guys aren't always going good. So you got to understand the human element, and I think that's what Carlos does very well.
So I want to talk about your three of your Cannons, right? And because you've been around a lot of really good players, and you've managed a lot of good players. You played with a lot of good players.
And obviously the three I want to talk to about is Lindor, Pete Alonso, and also Soto. From your perspective, because it's one thing to watch him, right? It's another thing to be around him. I'm going to start with Soto. Like, I don't know if you knew him at all. You watched him play, but now you've been around him for 3-4 months now. What's your take?
Well, I didn't know him a lick, I'd seen him on TV, heard all about him. Watched him play a little bit with the Yankees last year. He's a good guy, he's a quiet guy, keeps to himself. That's probably generally a lot of that's too just in a new place,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an old guy, but I think he's done a lot of good things for us. But I think he's been a little frustrated too. But his struggle, when he struggles, majority of players out there in the league would take his struggles over their success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's like, he's like a lot of superstars. They beat to their own drummer, but he's still feeling his way around, fitting in with the team and all that. But if we're gonna, we think we got a chance to win this whole thing, and if we do, we need him on top of our game, on his game.
When you've been around other superstars, I mean, you played with Strawberry, right? I mean, like going back, and you obviously managed the Jose Batistas and Encarnacion's and those guys. It is a big crown to wear, right? When you're when you're talking about the cannons, when you're the biggest cannon and everyone knows you're the biggest cannon.
Oh yeah, they're gunning for you. And it's not easy going to a new place that first year. I don't care how good you are. I mean, that's just the way it works. Mm-hmm. But those other two guys too you mentioned, Lindor. I watched him last year. It was amazing. He got up to a slow start. He was getting booed. I'd seen him in Cleveland. He was over there with Sarby, and we played him in the playoffs in '16, and when he was a young kid, and so I knew how good he was. But then I think it was May. Things just clicked for him, and that's as good as a player I've ever been around.
Yeah.
He shows up every day to play, good and bad. He never bags out. He never you can have a big lead or you can be down by a lot. He wants to stay in the game. Really a special guy, and and he did not miss last year. When we needed something big, he didn't miss. He's a special guy. He's it's funny. I was telling him yesterday because Jose Reyes was out the other day. Another Met great shortstop, switch hitter, shortstop. Was at the ballpark Yankees game the other day, and I was telling Lindy the other day. I said, aside from all the you guys would lead off hitter, switch hitter, shortstop, whatever. I said, when he was in Toronto, he was at the end of his career when I had him in Toronto, Reyes. One thing about him, he came to play every stinking day, smile on his face, busted his butt, even though he was aging and his production was going down. And I told him, that reminds me, you guys remind me so much of each other. And then the other guy, Batista, we talked about. So you put those three guys, almost at the top of my list in my baseball career, the guys that show up every stinking day, good, bad, or ugly to play. So anyway, who we got now?
I mean, people forget how good Lindor at this time last year, people were like screaming about MVP, right?
Oh, you're right. He did not. We needed something big last year. He got it, man. You can go back to whether home runs or driving and big base hits. I think a lot of people think he should have been the MVP. There's no question. He's an everyday player. I know Ohtani, the home runs, the stolen base, and all that. Yeah, there's something about being on that field every stinking day, man.
Oh yeah.
The grind of it takes its toll, and to play both sides of the ball. I think they ought to make just the MVP, DH MVP.
I like it.
Player.
Let's do it.
Let's
do it. And then you have Alonso, which obviously he struggled a little bit a lot, and then. It's interesting from your point of view because you see him last year going through what he went through. Then you see him this year, obviously taking off. Is there any discernible difference?
No, it's funny. We'd talk about it a little bit last year. I just think he was pressing, because it was his free agent year. He's a human being. I've seen other guys do that, in their careers. It's a big year for him, right? They get to that point. But you look, he'd always been one of the top home run hitters in the game, and RBI guys. That's just what he did. But I think he did press. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the first time I'd ever been around him. And so I just feel a different presence about him. I think he's calmer. and you know, he put last year behind him. You know, we talk about him. He struggled at times last year, but you know, he had the biggest hit of the year for us against Milwaukee. And then throughout that playoffs, he did a pretty damn good job. So, yeah, those are three big.
Yeah, it's good. Those are the cannons.
Those are the cannons, man. You know, those are the cannons.
Well, okay, let me ask you this, to Gibby, is that, so you go through last year, and everything, I mean, first of all, I looked at on June 11th, I think you guys were like 11 games under 500. I mean, it was nuts. And then you turn everything around, and you go on your way, and now it seems like you sort of picked up where you left off. Does it feel that way with you? Or is it different?
No. Hey, you got to remember, you know, there's a lot of talent on this team, and what was it, 22? They won over 100 games.
Yeah.
23, they you know, things, whatever, for whatever reason, didn't work out. And then, of course, we bounced back last year after a slow start. But, you know, Mendy just stayed steady, right? We knew we had talent. And I think, if I remember right, we pitched good well early, but we just weren't hitting, you know. But I got to tell you, in Citi Field during the spring, man, when it's cold and the weather's crazy, that ball goes nowhere, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're basically a home run hitting team if we're going to, you know. We'd crush some balls that would just die. And I'm thinking, damn, you know. And so that was part of our struggles early offensively.
But could you feel it coming? Could you feel it coming last year?
No, early on, no. We didn't know what to expect. You know, my first time around those guys, and really, and the whole coaching staff was new. But we knew we had talent. Now it was just a matter of whether it was, and you know, everybody's, you'd hear talk about the previous year when they had a tough time, you know, so you didn't know what to expect. But then when we started hitting, you could see, okay, this is it. All right, yeah. Because our pitching did a heck of a job, you know. Severino had a big year. Mania, who's going to come back and give us a jolt.
Yeah.
You know, they anchored Quintana. I mean, we were solid there, and our bullpen did a really good job. So it's really a good team. But, you know, you can look really good on paper. You got to go out and do it. And sometimes, you know, when you get a lot of new people, new coaching staff, it takes a while to gel or mesh. Sometimes it never does. But sometimes good things take time.
Well, you're the glue. What's the best margarita in baseball?
Best margarita? Well, I know what I like.
No, you're a beer guy.
Well, actually, you know, from being from South Texas, I like that Mexican food.
Okay.
And a frozen margarita, no salt.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Best. I want to know where I should go. Actually, our correspondent Courtney, who you've been on with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She asked me to ask you. Best margarita in San Antonio.
Well, there's a place downtown. It's called Mi Tierra's. Really good. But if you don't want to fight the traffic downtown, there's a place over where I live. It's called Alamo Cafe.
Alamo Cafe.
Tex-Mex.
All right.
Yeah. There's a lot of good ones. Yeah, hey, let me tell you something. Down in San Antonio, Texas, you're going to have no problems finding a good Mexican restaurant.
Well, I want to know which one that has the picture of you up on the wall.
None of them.
Yeah.
Behind bars.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you.
Robbie, my pleasure.